You have the little one.
We all know that worthiness is the key factor in whether someone can lift Mjolnir or not.
Jane?
We've seen a few examples of other characters besides Thor who showed they were worthy, and I'm wondering just who's next. Mjolnir is back in the MCU, so I thought this would be an interesting conversation to have. Specifically, what Phase 5 characters could be worthy of lifting Mjolnir, and what would the circumstances around that be?
I want it all!
Well, let's find out. Could Loki be worthy? Vision? Doctor Doom? I'm talking about them all right now. I think Loki should be on a path to eventually become worthy enough to lift Mjolnir, and I think it all starts in Phase 5.
Okay, wait.
Besides Captain America lifting it, I think Loki lifting Thor's hammer would be the thing that would warrant the biggest cheer out of an audience. And the way things are now, I think it's totally possible. Loki has had one of the most interesting character trajectories in the MCU. He started off as a breakout villain in Thor who was a little sympathetic, but then went full-on villain in the Avengers, only for them to further develop him back into a sympathetic character in Thor: The Dark World.
Not my father!
Then, over time, the MCU retconned things a bit by saying Loki was only being super evil in the Avengers because he was corrupted by the Mind Stone, which sure, whatever. Then Ragnarok turned him into a full-on good guy, but that only lasted about 3 seconds until Thanos arrived and choked the life out of him. But then a variant of himself escaped with the Tesseract and he had to go through his hero arc all over again. Now, he's one of the only characters standing in the way of Kang the Conqueror. That's an incredible arc when you lay that all out. So taking all that into consideration, I think the next logical step is him fully becoming worthy. He could either travel to a different universe in season 2 of Loki while battling Kang, where he stumbles upon that version of Mjolnir and uses it in a pivotal moment. Or, what would be even better is if this Loki got to reunite with our Thor and they got to team up with Thor wielding Stormbreaker and Loki wielding Mjolnir. Think of all the complex emotions Loki and Thor would feel. Like, Loki wouldn't just be happy he was lifting it, but he would be so proud that his brother gets to see that he's truly a changed person. Man, this is one of those things where I'm so convinced it should happen, I'm gonna be upset if it doesn't. Vision is in a bit of a weird place now in the MCU. The last we saw, Vision's body was rebooted and his settings turned to evil, and then a Wanda-created fake version of Vision instilled in Vision's body all of Vision's memories, and then the synthezoid flew off to parts unknown. You would think he would have played a part in Multiverse of Madness, but hey, maybe Paul Bettany was too busy to be involved.
So, Wanda killed him?
But if Vision wasn't a part of that story, then what is the MCU gonna do with him now? It would be extremely uncool if the last we saw of Vision was him flying off to parts unknown, and you would think that WandaVision wouldn't have done that if the MCU wasn't planning on bringing him back at a later time. But how do we know he's the same Vision as he was before? Well, let's use Mjolnir as the judge. Yes, I know Vision has already lifted Mjolnir, so you may be wondering why he's on this list, but I think this is a special circumstance since Vision basically has to relearn everything. And a good indicator for him to truly feel comfortable in his own body again would be if he's worthy to lift Mjolnir. Imagine your Vision and you're doubting whether or not you're the true Vision or not.
Huh?
Lifting the hammer could instill a lot of confidence is all I'm saying. And maybe Vision is now in space? He could have flown off planet at the end of WandaVision and could eventually stumble on Thor. I mean, that would be a better explanation of why he wasn't around during the events of Doctor Strange 2, right? You know what would just be like a nuclear bomb in the MCU? Deadpool.
Oh.
It's still a little unclear how exactly Deadpool can fit into the MCU now that the Fox characters are fully being integrated. But you know what? I'm perfectly fine if Deadpool stays in his own little universe. Deadpool is such a unique character who deserves to be unfiltered like he has been for the last 2 movies, which means suddenly inserting him into the MCU maybe isn't the best idea.
You're absolutely right.
Like, I could see a scenario where during Kang's ultimate attack, the universes all merge into one, and we see Deadpool fighting alongside everyone, but by the end, he's back in his own universe doing what he does best. And maybe in his universe, we could get bizarro and discount versions of our favorite Avengers. Like, here's a crazy pitch. What if they do a version of Deadpool kills the Marvel Universe, but frame it around how all the Avengers in Deadpool's universe are sort of bad guys? So it justifies a bit why Deadpool has to stop them. This means he could face a darker version of the God of Thunder and try everything he can to be worthy enough of his hammer. There would be a ridiculous training montage of Deadpool trying to do nice things in order to become worthy, and the payoff of him eventually holding the hammer to defeat his universe's Thor would just be absolutely amazing.
He's super dead.
Thor probably has the best relationship with the Hulk personality compared to anyone in the Avengers.
Banner's friend.
I don't even like Banner. I'm into numbers and science.
At least, I mean, who's still alive, that is. Sorry, Black Widow. I mean, that scene in Ragnarok where Thor and Hulk are yelling at each other, but then sit down and talk about how they're both burning fire and alpha males was a really surprisingly sweet moment. That's why I hope we can get some sort of interaction with the two of them again. It's about time that the Hulk personality came back after Bruce seemingly erased it completely, and what I think would be a cool sequence would be this. Mind you, what I'm about to say is pretty controversial and should technically never happen, but the MCU plays so fast and loose with the worthiness rules that I think it could get away with it. When the Hulk comes back, I would love for him to be angrier than we've ever seen him. Like World War Hulk levels of anger. I mean, why wouldn't he be angry?
Hulk, always Hulk.
Banner erased him from existence, and now he's ready to just explode. So we know the Hulk gets stronger the angrier he gets, so what if he reached a level of strength that was so intense that he was stronger than the Mjolnir enchantment? Yeah, that would signal that this version of Hulk is God-level angry. I guess he doesn't have to pick it up and wield it around all the time, but just show one moment of Hulk picking up the hammer and holding it, and that would be epic.
That pleasure.
Doctor Doom is coming. There's a really good chance he's popping up in Black Panther Wakanda Forever, maybe in a post-credit scene.
Indeed it does.
And what's a way to really establish this villain as one of the all-time great MCU baddies? Well, what if he found a way to lift Mjolnir? I'm not talking about Doom being secretly worthy because he's definitely far from it. But what if the evil tyrant was able to bypass the worthiness clause through some sort of tech and magic hybrid? Doom is such a fascinating villain because he's a tech genius like Tony Stark, but also has a good amount of magical prowess to be a pretty intimidating sorcerer. Put those together and I think there's a way to pick up Mjolnir. Some type of spell tech hybrid that would allow him to control Thor's hammer would immediately put Doom in a whole different league than anyone else. What I like about this idea is that it not only solidifies Doom as a major threat, but it shows that he's done his homework on the Avengers. I like a villain who's prepared for any scenario, and given that Doom could have spent years analyzing each potential threat's strengths and weaknesses, would be fascinating to see play out. Whoever is the next Black Panther is going to have some big shoes to fill. It's most likely Shuri, and a big character beat for her would be whether or not she feels like she's able to step into the Black Panther suit after her brother was taken from the world too soon. But this is where Mjolnir could be used to grant Shuri a sense of peace. If she's been doubting whether or not she's worthy of the mantle, then lifting Mjolnir would wipe away all the doubt. And yes, I know some people would say if you doubt yourself, you're probably unworthy, but think of Thor in Endgame when he was doubting himself and able to lift Mjolnir. Plus, Thor became worthy in the first movie when he stopped fighting for himself and more for the people he cared about, which is exactly what Shuri would be doing as the Black Panther. I don't know how these two would interact, but I'm just saying I think it would work. So there's a moment in the King in Black comic arc where Eddie Brock and Venom absorb the Enigma Force and then call Mjolnir and the Silver Surfer's surfboard to them to create a super weapon in order to stop Null. And now I'm bending over backwards trying to come up with a situation where this could be possible in the MCU. Okay, ready? Here's the pitch. Venom realizes he left a piece of himself in our universe, so Venom 3 is about him trying to get back to our universe in order to be complete again. So when Null is able to hop around universes, Venom follows him back to ours and somehow is able to tap into the symbiote hive mind and find a sense of worthiness within him. And then he just stumbles upon Thor's hammer. Sure, why not? I'd be fine with anything in order to get that King in Black arc in live action.
Yeah, well, that's easy for you to say.
Beta Ray Bill is a character we haven't seen yet, but when he does eventually show up, it's almost a guarantee that he'll be able to lift Mjolnir. I mean, that's kind of Beta Ray Bill's whole thing. In the comics, he was worthy of Mjolnir and carried it around until Thor came to get it back. Then Bill was given Stormbreaker as a replacement weapon. Given that the MCU has made Stormbreaker Thor's ultimate weapon, I'm really curious how they would work Bill into the story. Maybe while traveling the universe together, Thor and Love encounter the Corbinite, who is able to lift Mjolnir and take it for himself, which causes an epic chase across the universe. I mean, the theme of Thor's movies recently is that he can lose everything but still find joy in life. So after losing Jane, maybe the next thing he can do is pass Mjolnir over to Beta Ray Bill permanently? I mean, then Stormbreaker wouldn't be so jealous all the time.
There you are.
We've seen Captain Marvel and Thor get into a fight in the What If show. But I hope that could eventually carry over into live action. These are two titans of the MCU whose punches could shake planets, and watching these two duke it out would be a lot of fun. But what could the situation be where Carol is able to lift Mjolnir? I would like to see some sort of character arc where Carol goes from being super strong to worthy. Like in their first encounter, she thinks she's able to lift Mjolnir because she is one of the universe's most powerful beings, but when she can't do it, she has to go on her own personal journey to find out what true worthiness is. It's hard when you introduce a character as already super strong because it's hard to know where to go next with them. So Mjolnir again could be used to help character development. Ironheart is in a similar situation as the next Black Panther in that she has big shoes to fill. Spider-Man's arc in Far From Home was how he was potentially the next Iron Man, and while that arc ended with Peter realizing that he should just be himself, that also means we're still waiting for that next Iron Man, and that's where Ironheart comes in. Riri Williams has the potential to be the next big star in the MCU. She's going to have Tony's tech brain with Wakandan-backed technology, and that immediately makes her one of the most interesting heroes in Phase 5. So could she be the potentially first young Avenger to wield Mjolnir? I like the idea of Stark's successor being the one able to lift the hammer. Like, Riri could be inspired by Tony's sacrifice, and that heroic sense is what helps her become worthy. Blade would be an offbeat choice as someone who's worthy to wield Mjolnir, but I'm ready for the MCU to throw a wild curveball with the character. Like, we know in Eternals that Blade was there talking to Dane Whitman about the Ebony Blade, which suggests that Blade has a knowledge of the weapon.
Sure you're ready for that, Mr. Whitman?
What if Blade is just some weapons expert who has working knowledge of all weapons and could lift Mjolnir because of it? Okay, that's a little dumb, but I have a better idea actually. So Blade is part vampire, right? And vampires are undead. I doubt the hammer's enchantment works on dead things, so what if Blade can use his undead side to lift the hammer? Come on, that doesn't sound too far-fetched, right? So in Endgame, there was a moment where Captain America chucked Mjolnir and Spider-Man attached his web to it and it caused him to escape Thanos' army. And the physics suggest Spider-Man wasn't worthy of the hammer then, right? Or else the hammer would have slowed down. But after the events of No Way Home, could Peter have become worthy?
What exactly is it that they do?
Yes, Peter always has self-doubt and guilt within him, which makes him, I think, unworthy in the hammer's eyes. But what about his choice to not retell MJ and Ned who he was in order to protect them and dedicate himself to living his own private life where no one remembers him? That was an ultimate sacrifice, probably right up there as one of the biggest sacrifices of all time in the MCU, below Tony and Natasha's sacrifice, and probably Cap's sacrifice from the first Avenger, but it's up there. So Moon Knight would be another character who's not necessarily worthy, but he just has a great loophole for why he can lift Mjolnir. In the comics, Moon Knight obviously is Khonshu's avatar, and Mark Spector is imbued with all sorts of moon god powers. This means he has the power to affect moon rocks. Now, 9 times out of 10, this is the last power you'd want if you had to pick powers, but it does come with the nifty ability to control Mjolnir. See, Mjolnir is made from Uru, which is a special type of moon rock, which means Moon Knight can circumvent the enchantment and use the hammer to his advantage. How this would unfold in the MCU, I have no idea, but in my opinion, Thor: Love and Thunder should have really included more of the Egyptian gods like Khonshu, since it was all about gods and the Moon Knight show was like right before Thor: Love and Thunder. Moon Knight would have made that movie better is all I'm saying.
Only punish those who have chosen evil.
Could Matt Murdock lift Mjolnir in Phase 5? I mean, why not? Okay, I don't mean that. I know it sounds like I'm just throwing worthiness at anyone who's getting a Phase 5 project, but I mean, Daredevil is a special exception. He's actually going to be the character we spend the most time with. He's showing up in She-Hulk, he's showing up in Echo, he's showing up in his own 18-episode show. If Spider-Man 4 gets an announcement for Phase 5, I would bet he shows up there too.
That's great.
What if in the Daredevil show, Matt Murdock has a dream about wielding the hammer and then suddenly loses that ability to carry it to signify how Matt's Catholic guilt is always weighing on him? I mean, again, we have 18 episodes to fill. Let's have some fun dream sequences at some point, why not? I'm not sure what Agatha's future in the MCU is going to be, but I hope we can showcase just how powerful her magic can affect things.
This is awkward.
One way to really highlight just how dangerous Agatha could be is if her magic is powerful enough to circumvent the charm on Mjolnir. I mean, I wouldn't put that past her, right? Okay, let's put Agatha on the Thunderbolts team as their dark version of Doctor Strange and have them encounter Thor to set up this wacky scenario. I bet Thor would be afraid of a witch, especially a witch that can control his hammer.
Sweet.
Are there any heroes who might be unworthy of lifting Mjolnir? Like, Star-Lord will probably never be worthy, right? Or Rocket? Really, any of the Guardians, I guess. But what do you think? Let me know in the comments below. Thanks for watching CBR.